Hello and welcome to the ROPESCAST, the independent voice of the Middle East. I'm your host, Ksenia Svetlova. ROPE stands for the Regional Organization for Peace, Economics and Security. We are a young organization dedicated to laying the groundwork for a post-conflict Middle East. We do this by connecting forward-thinking Israeli and Palestinian emerging leaders with like-minded peers across the region. At ROPES, we share a holistic vision for the Middle East, one where every individual has far more to gain from regional integration and conflict resolution than they have to lose. For more information on our work, please visit our website at ropes.org. And joining us today is a very special person. It's Danny Citrinowicz, a top Israeli analyst on Iranian affairs. Danny is a non-resident fellow with the Atlantic Council Middle East Program, and he's also a fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies. Previously, he was senior fellow at the Institute for Policy Strategy, IPS, and the Abba Eban Institute at Reichman University. Citrinowicz served for 25 years in a variety of command positions units in Israeli Defense Intelligence, including as the head of the Iran branch at the Research and Analysis Division in the Israeli Defense Intelligence and the division's representative in the United States. Danny, it's really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. And, there's our private joke, but now it will not become so private. For the last few months, I've been calling you Danny, I told you so. And the reason is because you indeed, one, I think, of the very, very few Israeli analysts and experts who were very consistent from the very beginning on the issue of the Iran war, that it's ill-planned and a problematic military adventure that will not lead to some desirable outcome for both United States and Israel. And here we are. Now, almost 6 months into this war, not war. I would like to first of all ask you about what is happening these days, because a lot of Israelis, just like myself, are wondering whether they will be able to take this vacation in the August, sometime in August, or whether we will find ourselves running to the shelters once again.
Well, yeah, Ksenia, thank you very much for inviting me. And as you know, as someone that's living in the Middle East, everything is wide open, and we don't know what will happen. I think that definitely chances of escalation are mounting. In general terms, what we had is after the signing of the MOU at 17th of June, I think both sides understand differently the main paragraphs of the memorandum, mainly paragraph 5 dealing with the control over the straits. The Iranians believe that they have the control. The US believe that it's no one's control. And they're starting back and forth because of the operational translation of that, because US started pushing tankers through Oman, and the Iranians insisted that all tankers will go through the Iranian route. And then we found ourselves in another escalation. And I think the US now is returning back to, again, another familiar junction when they have to decide whether to return back to negotiation, accepting maybe the Iranian translation of the MOU, or expanding the war, because what they're doing now is maybe operationally significant, trying to undermine the Iranian control over the straits, but practically it's not going to prevent Iran from attacking tankers in the future. So they'll have to decide whether to expand the war or not. And if they will expand the war, definitely I think that Israel, it's increased possibility that Israel will join in some way or form if the war will be expanded dramatically. So I totally understand why you and a lot of Israelis really think whether they will have the ability to get there or to use the time off and go to live outside of Israel. I'm hoping that you will have the ability to do so, but definitely every day that moving forward maybe increases the chances of another escalation.
But basically, what is the rationale in Washington? And then we will go to Tehran and speak about them. But if we are speaking about the expanding of the war and going back to this military attacks against perhaps the island of Harg, taking over, the island of Harg, all of these ideas were discussed before. Will it really change anything in the demeanor of the Islamic Republic? I think because, it seems to me because from what Trump is saying that although, he's mad at them and they're scum of the earth and all of that, but he still would want to basically to have some kind of understanding and end of this war, rather than just, endless spending of, military powers and so on.
Yeah, well, you asked the right questions. I think that, I'll tell you a small joke. Every time that people ask me about the Israeli policy towards Iran, I keep saying that it's easy for me to describe the Iranian policy, not the Israeli policy. It's very hard to describe, and I think it goes also to what's happening now in Washington. I think it's easier to describe what the Iranians are trying to do. They're definitely trying to preserve the control over the Straits. They have zero trust in Trump, and they know that it's the only way for them to increase the damage on the international economy, and thus increasing their deterrence capability against Israel and the US in that regard. So I think that it's obvious that the Iranians won't capitulate. I think the main question, like you alluded, is what is the administration is trying to do? Operationally, we totally understand what they're trying to do, but strategically, knowing that the Iranians don't capitulate, what is the end game for the administration? And I think it's also connected to the question of Israel getting into the war. I think it will be a bitter mistake by Israel to get into the war without agreeing from the beginning with the administration what is the end game. Because Israel can get into the war, and after 3 days, Trump can say, okay, stop, or whatever. We've been this road before. So I think that this is the main question. I don't have the answer for it, because at the end of the day, Trump is saying a lot of things, contradicting things. We can find ourselves tomorrow returning back to negotiation, or 2 days from now we can strike Pickaxe Mountain. I don't know. But I think until we won't know what is the end game, we won't able to understand where the administration is going. The problem for the administration that I think that he's looking at, military escalation, not as a mean, as an end, meaning that this is the target. But okay, what they're expecting to achieve from this escalation, I don't understand what they're trying to do. And this is why it's very hard to understand how things will develop towards the future. But obviously, they're speaking so much about escalation, so maybe escalation is really on the table.
Yeah. So, now let's move to Tehran, because on their side, I mean, it's not all rosy like they would like us to think, so the economic crisis is not going anywhere. A lot of strategic objects in the country were destroyed. Wouldn't it would be better to them to strike some kind of deal with Trump if he's willing, and we see that he's willing?
Yeah, I totally agree that the situation in Iran is very problematic economically, goes without saying. Sorry. But I think that this has no real influence on the calculus of the Iranian, meaning that, yes, they're aware of the situation, but for them, it's a life and death situation. They are fighting for the existence. Even more than that, when they saw the demonstrations or the everything that happened in the Ali Khamenei funeral, they actually assume that they have the support of majority of people in Iran to continue their dogmatic approach toward the Straits. So yes, Pezeshkian, the president, talking a lot about the economy, and the exchange rate is, crossing every barrier for the negative side, and the unemployment, and all you just see what's happening in the stock exchange in Tehran, the red screen and everything. Definitely economically, they're in a very bad situation. It was a bad situation before the war, very bad situation during the war, and of course after the war itself. But for them, they have no intention because of that to capitulate. On the contrary, they're saying if we capitulate now, we'll capitulate in the future. So they will stand firm. For them, the MOU was everything that they're able to give as a compromise to the US. They, despite a lot of friction within the leadership, they had some sort of unanimous voice in terms of supporting the MOU. Mujtaba talked about Pezeshkian and the fact that he was in favor of that, but we saw even Muhammad Bakr Dhul-Ghada, the secretary of the SNS, was supportive of the MOU, and he's a very extreme guy in the agency. So I think in that regard, they want to return back to the MOU, but the MOU translated by the Iranians. And they're not going to negotiate anything else. So this is why I think that we are actually going to escalation, because I don't see anything that the US will do or threaten or whatever that will change this calculus in Iran. Even another blockade, another bomb, whatever, at the end of the day, they will stand firm. And this is why I think that at the end of the day, they will have to push the Americans to do something else in order to change what we have, the standard that we have right now, more or less.
Now, another part, of this equation, it's the Arab countries that found themselves hostage, in the situation, and we see how Oman really tried to go on tiptoes and negotiate and offer this kind of neutral side in diplomacy, and they were very adversary towards the United States and so on, but still they were bombed. There were 4 attacks also against Oman during the last couple of weeks, and of course Kuwait and Bahrain and Saudi and Emirati tankers and whatnot. So these countries, that many of them, I think that they really pushed for diplomacy, and they were the ones that were responsible for the MOU together with Pakistan and Turkey. Do they still believe in this? Do I think that it's this MOU is it's not crumbling, it's dead, yes. But what can they offer next? What can they do vis-a-vis the American administration? Obviously, they cannot do nothing vis-a-vis Iran.
Yeah, you're right. And again, I want to say something about the 2 elements that really lost during this war. One is the Iranian public, that actually no help is on its way, on the contrary. And the second are the Gulf states. It's a lose-lose situation for them. Nothing good will come out from this war, if any. And I think that you see that it's very hard to talk about the Gulf states as one element. I think that you have Gulf states that maybe they are situated in the same geographical location, but definitely there's no connection between them. I think the Omanis and the Qataris are still hoping for a ceasefire. For them, the blame is on the US and Israel and not on Iran in general. And I think that they will try to do the utmost. They are very worried about a future escalation, because what will happen that if Israel will enter the war and attacking energy facilities, the Iranian will attack the Gulf states' energy facilities. So I think that for them, they're trying to stop the war. I think that other countries like Saudi Arabia, it's a very good question what's happening now. They have a mountain to climb with the Houthis right now. They're trying to block their ports. So I think that escalation is maybe almost inevitable also there. And I think also from the Saudis, I don't think they want to return back to a futile war with the Houthis. And I think they're trying to find a way out from this stalemate. And then you have the UAE. And I think the UAE, again, they're maybe hoping for some sort of unified action of the Gulf states against Iran. And maybe they're hoping that there'll be a increasing of activity of the US and Israel, maybe again to try to undermine the Iranian regime. But I think that majority of the Gulf states are still interested in finding a political solution. The war situation for them is what we have right now, the limbo that creating instability. Those countries need stability. Stability brings economy. And without stability, there is no economy. Definitely when most of those countries are based on expats. And I think that for them, most of these countries, but even UAE, I think in a lot of terms, are interested in finding a political solution, MOU, whatever, that will allow them to return back to some sort of a status quo that will allow them to rebuild their economy. They suffered huge losses on the economy. So I believe that most of them are still interested in finding a political solution. That most of them are still interested in interaction, some way or form with the current Iranian regime. And if someone in Israel thinks that we again utilize this war for normalization, whatever, it's of course we know that it's a hopeless cause right now. And those countries are still believe in some sort of interaction with the Islamic Republic of Iran.
What do you make of the recent announcement of Trump that he actually supports the peaceful nuclear Saudi program? Because it seems kind of out of the blue. These things were said during the MBS trip to Washington in November. I remember vividly, that Israel was hoping that there will be some tie between the nuclear program and and the other elements, perhaps F-35. And so on, and then it was clear that it's not happening. So now Trump says it again. I support your program. So why is it happening now? 5 minutes before this possible escalation. Can there be a connection, some kind of deal, perhaps with the Saudis in regards to the future military activities against Iran?
I can run away from the thought that the timing is really connected to the Saudis' help for the U.S. activity against Iran. I think it's also connected to a phone call that MBS had with Trump a couple of weeks ago, when also they talked about the campaign against the Houthis. So I think, yes, there is a connection. I think that also U.S. is trying to compensate the Saudis for the lack of ability to defend Saudi Arabia during the war itself. And I think that the best way for them is, of course, improving this deal. For our Israeli viewers, of course, this deal was supposed to be within the structure of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And actually, it was conditioned by that. But now President Trump decided to separate that. This is one bad thing for Israel. The worst thing is I don't know which kind of checks and balances this will have. Obviously, the Saudis want to have infrastructure that will allow them the base to build a nuclear bomb. If they wanted to have just a nuclear energy, they could have what the UAE has in terms of, just reactors, but they want to have the enrichment on their soil. And I'm not sure that the checks and balances that will be built will prevent Saudi Arabia from building a bomb. And you also need to remember the Saudis can get a lot of help from the Pakistanis. So I think in that regard, these developments are not good developments for Israel, unfortunately. Maybe within some sort of normalization framework, maybe, but it's not there is no connection between that and normalization right now. And unfortunately, I think that this is a prize for the Saudis. They're not going to pay anything for it. And I'm not sure we are able in the future to prevent them from reaching a nuclear bomb. So definitely a negative development, I believe, in the Israeli view.
It comes to my mind that during many years, Israeli intelligence warned against the possibility that Saudi Arabia, although, not an enemy country, certainly for Israel, but still, you don't know what will happen there tomorrow. The usual suspicions about, having this widening of the nuclear club in the Middle East. We don't hear these statements anymore from the intelligence community so much, from its head, the new head, and so what's going on there?
Well, I'm hoping that we'll hear something, but on general terms, I think when you're looking at the Trump administration behavior in the region, and I think go connected to the F-35, to Turkey, and now this event, we have to remember that yes, Trump is a loyal friend to the state of Israel, but he's definitely, first and foremost, loyal friend to the U.S. interest in the region. And the F-35 to Turkey can really shift the air balance in the Middle East, and giving the Saudis nuclear capabilities can really change and can really undermine the stability in the region in terms of the fact that this is something that definitely can cause other countries to have the same capabilities. But even worse than that, I really think that, again, when you're building these kind of capabilities and giving this kind of knowledge, it has to come with a price. And there is no price. I think, yes, the Saudis are investing in the US, but I think in terms of regional stability and normalization, they're not paying the price. They're still insisting everything is connected to the Palestinian issue. And I totally understand in their part why they want to do that. But I think that we're giving them a huge prize without them giving us almost nothing in terms of regional stability and normalization. And I'm hoping, by the way, that we'll hear something from the Israeli administration, from the Israeli Atomic Energy Committee, from the IDI, because at the end of the day, it cannot be positive development for Israel. On the contrary, and I think, yes, we are all focused right now on Iran, but we have to pay great attention to what's happening in this deal, because it really can change the Middle East, and we should be alarmed by it.
Well, it definitely seems like the new Middle East is shaping up, but not exactly the same that the one that we were hoping for, in which there would be a wide alliance between Israel and the Arab countries, perhaps against Iran, and also Turkey that would be much weaker than it is today. So we see a very problematic picture, and part of it is happening due to the consequences of the current consequences of the war in Iran.
You're absolutely right, and I think that the war in Iran is a tectonic event that will have a huge influence on every one of us. It's very hard to assess how much, because we're living in it right now, but it's very hard. It will have a huge effect. We don't know the extent of it. The second regarding, I think that everything that you said, and I totally agree, I think that it's forcing Israel, again, to rethink our strategy in the region. I think the last thing that we want to see is a huge conflict between us and the Turks. We don't want to transform the Turks from adversaries to enemies. I'm not a favor of Erdogan and his statement about Israel, but I think that we have to be very clever in what we are doing there. We have to be clever about everything that connected to Syria. You know, the Syrian intelligence that stopped weapons going from the Shiite militias in Iraq to Hezbollah. I don't say they can be our friends, but we definitely can work with them, and that's also easing the pressure between us and the Turks. And this is why I think that we, again, from this government in Israel, I have no hopes right now. But after the elections, I'm hoping that the new government, whatever it will be, will reassess the strategy regarding the Middle East. F-35 to Turkey, I think we cannot prevent that from happening. Same thing goes now with the nuclear issue. If the U.S. administration is determined to do so, they will do so, regardless what Israel will say. And I think we have to rebuild a strategy that understand that, rebuild the alliances, rethink about the Palestinian issue as a core issue to move forward in that regard. And also in the Iranian issue, I don't know how Iran war will end. Nobody knows. But I think that also regarding Iran, Israel maybe need to think about a new strategy, assuming that this regime is not going anywhere, we're not able to topple it, assuming that future administration in the US won't return back to this adventure. And we have to build more realistic strategy that's still trying to contain the regime, but taking into the account the glass ceiling that we have in terms of changing the regime itself. So I think that I agree with you completely. These changes are forcing the next Israel government to rethink about the policy, let alone everything that connected to our relations with Egypt and Jordan. Those things need to be in the center of the new strategy of Israel. And I'm truly hoping that the next government will definitely do so.
Inshallah, as we say. You know, you actually, what you said right now about the Iranian regime not going anywhere, it's a perfect lead to my next question. And, you know, the hot story that, you know, it was published a few weeks ago, but it's still hot today. I think it will be for the month, you know, to come and maybe years. It's the details about the alleged plan of Israel and the US to topple the Iranian regime and to substitute Khamenei for Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the Holocaust denier, a very eager supporter of the Iranian nuclear program. And, you know, it seems to me that, you know, actually it's not important that, you know, it's Ahmadinejad or it could be somebody else. Because the mere thought of Israel nominating the future head of Iran, I mean, you know, how weird is that? You know, is it sick? But this seems like that there was a real program, you know, that was conceived not by Netanyahu. I mean, he eagerly supported it, but it was the security services, you know, that's the worrying part. You know, you're coming from this milieu, and I know if it's a little bit hard to talk about, again, you know, people that, you know, of course, you know, all of them, you know, some of them were your colleagues, but how can this happen?
You know, Ksenia, people still asking me whether it was true because it sounds so science fiction in so many ways.
It does. It does.
That people saying it cannot happen. Yes. No way. It's influence campaign running by the Mossad or whatever. It cannot happen. No one thought about crowning Ahmadinejad as leader of Iran. But unfortunately, probably it happened. And I really think it's really another example for the flawed, half-baked plan that we had. And I think that it's part of our hubris that we really thought that we can change the regime in Iran. And I think that in the end of the day, it's actually highlighted how flawed the campaign was. And I think it's really demanding at least some sort of an inquiry committee. Because it's not that we failed in the war and can say, okay, we failed, and that is what it is. We created the worst reality in Iran. Well, now we're discussing everything that's connected to Pickaxe Mountain and things like that. This is because the Iranian leadership now, without Ali Khamenei, that actually was the guy that prevented the crossing the Rubicon on the military route, or the military dimension on the nuclear side. This is because Israel and the US changing the regime or creating changes within the regime. It actually created a much more extreme regime that we cope from the beginning of the war, meaning that I'm not a fan of Ali Khamenei, but he was a cautious guy. And so what we try to do is, killing Khamenei and crowning Ahmadinejad actually was a huge failure that changed the trajectory of the Islamic Republic in a very, very bad way. The RGCs will have more control. Mujtaba Khamenei would never have been elected unless his father was decapitated by Israel. And I think that all the details that we have, maybe we'll hear another details in the future, just highlighting how amateuristic this plan was and how people that actually planned it didn't understand Iran. You know, we talked about Ahmadinejad, no way that this guy could ever control Iran. We know Al Jazeera would never hear to him. With support from the lower classes, but not only that. But the Kurdish issue is again another. Who thought that they would do that? Who thought that Erdogan would allow that will happen? And I think really, I'm
and
amazed.
Also that 15,000 of militants, from the Kurdish militias will be able to hold, spots of Iran.
It takes Manshah, and then Russia came to Tehran, and then the demonstration will happen again. It sounds like, really, again, I'm trying to be very, let's say, modest, because maybe they had some data, whatever. But still, looking that from the outside and seeing what those people thought will happen, I really think that it shows the gap, between Israel's intelligence superiority and understanding where Khamenei is, where the missiles are, and understanding Iran as a nation, as a political system. This is something that we seriously has major flaws in it, and that created a plan that was half-baked, and at the end of the day failed miserably, despite the operational achievement that we had, and created a very bad reality for all of us to cope with right now.
But it seems to be a pattern there, Danny, because both of us, we worked with General Amos Gilad, who heads now the Institute for Policy and Strategy. He has a wonderful book, Hamatria, the warning guy, the guy who warned, and he wrote there about Lebanon and the miserable adventure, in '82, an attempt to nominate Bashir Gemayel as the president of Lebanon. That ended badly first of all, for Gemayel, of course, for Lebanon and for Israel, that stayed in Lebanon for 18 years more after that day. And doesn't seem that anything changes, there is still this conviction. I don't know, who feeds it, that, Israel can topple the regime here, there, Lebanon, Iran, Gaza. Hamas is still there in Gaza, ruling Gaza, after 3 years of very, extreme warfare. So what does it tell about, the ability to strategically plan the future? And I'm not speaking here only about Netanyahu, but about the whole milieu of political and military class.
First, I think it's forcing you to be modest, because yes, Israel we definitely have major capabilities in terms of our military might and our intelligence superiority, but it doesn't say anything about ability to change the course of nations. But I think that we should learn from that. I think also there is a direct line between the 7th of October and what's happening on 28th of February in terms of the hubris and misunderstanding of our enemies. But since we didn't have any inquiry for the 7th of October, then we damned to repeat the same mistake that we did then and now. And I think even worse than that, I think that, again, it's forcing us, as we discussed, to rethink about our strategy in the region and be very modest about what we can do. Same goes to Syria, same goes to Lebanon. Israel, we showed from the 7th of October that we can hit everywhere, we can kill anyone, but it doesn't say it will help actually build our security, because the fact that we can bomb everywhere in the Middle East does not say that it's not equal to sense of security of the people of Israel. Because I think that, like you mentioned, we have open-ended fronts. I'm not sure that the Israeli public feels safer because the Israeli Air Force can bomb anywhere in the region. And I think that there is a stark difference between the statement coming from our leadership about the new Middle East that Israel created and actually what's happening on the ground. Because I think most of the countries in the region see Israel as an element that is actually undermining the stability of the region and not helping the stability of it. So I think that, again, it's all returned back to returning back to square zero in terms of strategic planning, rethink about our strategy in the region, because those adventures, like what's happening in Iran, and I return back to the attack in Qatar, those adventures are not helping the Israeli security. And I think that on the contrary, it's actually undermining it. And what's happening in Iran is actually another indication for it. And I'm really hoping that we'll have the ability to learn from the mistakes and the failures and to build on them to build a concrete strategy. I'm not optimistic in that regard, but I'm hoping that it will happen.
Well, ROPES, the organization that I have a privilege to lead, and within the this frame, we're also having this conversation. It's an organization of hope. So we unite young people from all across the region, young leaders of their societies, who happen to believe that it's not all is lost, that we still can speak to each other. We still can build bridges. Built on respect, mutual respect, understanding, and the desire to solve conflicts. So I wonder, if we are discussing the future, what you can tell, what would be your advice to the policymakers in Israel, in the Arab countries, in the US? What are the next steps? And I'm not meaning only, vis-a-vis Iran and its proxies that, of course, contributed their share to this current mess, with funding and supporting Hezbollah and Houthis and Hamas and all of that, but also what proactively can be done, and not in a military way, in order to change perceptions, in order to strategically plan for a better future.
First, I think that definitely what ROPES is trying to do is very important. I think that the people-to-people connection is crucial. And this is why I think that this is need to continue regardless of the situation. I think that the sad truth is that also countries that already we have a peace agreement with them, Jordan and Egypt, need to be within this kind of framework because of the fact that the situation there is very problematic. In terms of what needs to be done, I think that first and foremost, we have to return back to the Palestinian route. It's crucial. It's crucial. I'm not saying now let's build a Palestinian nation and that's it. I know the obstacles along the way. But first we have to stop any activity that will prevent us from having this kind of, again, two-state solution or two entities, whatever we'll call it. But I think that we have to stop everything that's happening that prevent that strategy to be fulfilled. So first and foremost, stop this annexation activity. Second, I think that we have to think hard and clear about the future in Gaza. I have my own sense about the need to return back the Palestinian Authority there, but I think that no invasion of Israel will help in that regard. Third, I think understanding, a lot of discussion about the economical side of things. I agree about the significant improvement, especially in the West Bank, but it's not enough. We have to combine also the political elements. And I think by doing so, it will open the way to strengthen the relationship with Jordan and Egypt. I'm very alarmed what's happening in the relations between these important countries. And I think this will have enough room to return back to some sort of negotiation with the Saudis on normalization. So I think in parallel of that, I'm hoping to the implementation of the agreement with the Lebanese government, withdrawal from Lebanon, and then continue negotiating on the borderline, and with something of the Syrians working together on some sort of a security deal, knowing that our presence definitely on the buffer zone does not help our defense posture in the north, and agreeing with them will ease the pressure with the Turks that I will restart some sort of connection with them on a security note, maybe the confliction, knowing that it won't serve us good if we'll have a friction with them. So I think there are multiple things that we can do, but I think that the core has to be Palestinian. If we want to rebuild our legitimacy in the world, also return back to Palestinian. Again, Israel does not need to build a Palestinian state right now, but it has to show that it has no intention for one-state solution future, but even more than that, that he's willing to take action to prevent that from happening and started discussing or rediscussing the political dimension of this conflict. That is the crucial thing to do, with all due respect to Iran. Even if the Iranian regime will fail tomorrow, it won't solve all the Palestinian issue. And I think that the core is the Palestinian issue, not the Iranian one. This is why I think that Iran, yes, will have to continue pressuring them, whatever. But if someone asks me what is the best solution to prevent Iranian meddling in the Middle East, this is a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians that will lead to normalization with the Saudis, that will counter the Iranians' ability to intervene in the Middle East and not supporting it. By the way, everything that is happening now is supporting the Iranian claim, saying that we have to support the Palestinian brothers or whatever. So this is another element that we can use that to push the Iranian involvement away from the Middle East. So yes, there are a lot of things we can do. It's demanding a political will, maybe political courage in the new Israeli leadership, but without doing so, our legitimacy, our problems with our neighbors will only intensify. And I think also Israel is in a crossroad. This is why this election is so important. I'm hoping that the next government will have the courage to do those things, especially regarding the Palestinian issue.
Well, Danny, I think it's amazing because, your words right now, your statements, it's the exactly antithesis to everything that was pushed as a strategy, as an ideology by Netanyahu government during the last few years, that you actually can decimate between the relations with Arab countries and the Palestinian problem, Iran and the Palestinian problem. They are not connected, but everything is connected. It's all connected. And,
of course, and I think not many people told me MBS couldn't care less about Palestinians. I said maybe personally couldn't care less about them, but that the leader of the Sunni world, he cannot ignore them. After 7th of October, he cannot allow something to happen with Israel with no concrete steps by Israel that will push towards a two-state solution. He's not expecting to two-state solution, but he's expecting to tangible thing that Israel will do towards that. And I think that people do not understand that what happened maybe before the 7th of October has no relevance after the 7th of October. MBS won't do anything towards Israel, no IMEC, no whatever, unless Israel will give him that. And this will be crucial because it also will help our UAE friends that finding ourselves very isolated because of what we're doing regarding Palestinians. It's going to help them to expand the Abraham Accord, the structure within the GCC and others. So I think, again, we cannot ignore that. Netanyahu always thought about jumping to the third circle, as we call it, to Iran, and that will lead to normalization, regardless of what the Palestinians will do. This is a hopeless cause. It's a wishful thinking. It's not going to happen. We just need to hear what the Saudis are saying, the Omanis are saying, the Qataris are saying. Not everyone that's against normalization with Israel because what Israel is doing against Palestinians is against normalization, period. I think most of them, I think even MBS, we're in favor of normalization as long as Israel would do the right thing regarding Palestinians. And that is something, by the way, to do the thing regarding Palestinians is on us, and not on anyone else. And I think first and foremost, it serves our interest and our future, regardless of the normalization with Saudi Arabia. That it's a big prize if we do that. And this is why I think that maybe the failure regarding Iran, again, it's a wishful thinking, but maybe that failure regarding Iran will force the next government to rethink about the strategy holistically. Because I have to say also criticism about the government of change that we had. They did the same thing as Netanyahu. Nothing can change over there as well. So I think that it requires a new set of views, of understanding of where Israel is. If we continue the same thing that we did in the past, our situation won't improve. That goes without saying.
Well, Israel definitely needs a restart. Let's hope that that's what will happen, that indeed, the country will get the fresh start and a new way of thinking, and not an attempt to disguise some baseless wishful thinking as policy. Danny, thank you very much for being with us and sharing your strategic insights.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
You've been listening to the ROPESCAST, the independent voice of the Middle East. I'm Ksenia Svetlova. To learn more about our work at ROPES, to support our mission of building regional integration, or to listen to more episodes, to please visit our website at ropes.org. You can also follow us on social media to stay updated on our latest initiatives and solidarity visits across the region. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to having you with us for our next episode. Shalom and salam.